Welcome to Housing Developments.
I'm Jim Tobin.
And I'm Paul Lopez.
Paul, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a long week
know
here
it
in
has.
Washington, D.C. A lot of good action and working on our 2024 budget, working on our new strategic plan. So we've had good interaction with our members here in town.
Yeah, we have.
And look forward to bringing those two documents and our vision for the future of the members in just a couple months.
No, 100%. So, look, I love this time of year, actually.
Yeah, right.
And let's take away from housing, right? Like
Right.
sports, if you're a sports fan, right?
Right.
Like this is the best time ever, right? Like
Right. Baseball playoffs, football season, college football.
Basketball's already starting to
That's right.
trickle
That's
in.
right. Hockey season just started last
Right.
night, a couple nights ago.
Yeah. So this, and then the weather's fantastic. So
It is.
So you kind of put all that stuff together.
It's the most
and
wonderful time of the year.
It is the most wonderful time of the year.
That's right.
But let's talk a little bit first about the economy,
Right.
and then kind of talk about what's going on the Hill. We got inflation numbers today.
Yep, that's right.
A little bit hotter than expected. It was supposed to be
Yeah.
0.3%. It actually
Right.
went 0.4.
Right.
But the bigger issue is that 70% of that inflation came from shelter housing.
Right. Yeah. And that's been the story for the last several months.
Absolutely. Yep.
And, once again, it's, housing demand is outpacing supply. Interest rates are keeping people in their homes not allowing them to be sold essentially.
Yep.
Well, you can sell them, of course, but why are you going to trade in your 3% mortgage for 7, right?
plus, yeah.
So the market's frozen up. New homes continue to be the only game in town if you want to buy a home.
Yep.
Or they make up at least the big chunk of the for sale market.
That's right.
So not shocking that home prices are high and they're an outsized portion of the inflation number.
Yeah, and home pricing and rents continue to take up too. So
Yeah.
between those two, like
Right.
housing seems to be stressed, which is
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah,
right. That's a good
right.
word for it.
I think that's right. That's right.
Which is why we took action this week. If you want to tell
Yeah.
folks about that,
Yeah. So our the big three in housing, the National Mortgage Bankers Association and the National Association of Realtors, along with NAHB, sent a letter to the Fed, to Chair Powell, obviously in particular, and said, "Okay, enough's enough. Congratulations, you did it. You've broken housing," and basically highlighted the fact that housing continues to be this outsized portion of inflation, acknowledging that the Fed's mandated role is to combat inflation,
right?
But you've got to keep an eye on the housing market. And Fed and Chair Powell says that all the time, right?
Sure.
They're watching housing, but we needed to watch a little bit closer. And so we asked really for two things. One, they need to send a signal to the markets that the rate increases are done.
Right.
Done. And there's rumors every month, oh, this is the last one. Oh, they're going to take a pause.
Yeah.
We're still, November will be the next big test of whether or not these inflation numbers are still too hot. And so we're asking them to not just pause, but to tell everybody they're pausing.
Right.
And we all know the Fed likes to be very cryptic and when it speaks, not to spook markets, and
Sure.
keep the flexibility in their ability to manage monetary policy. The other ask was to have them stop selling mortgage-backed securities that are on their books. That was one of the ways that they were looking to tighten the mortgage market by selling securities that they hold. They bought a ton of securities in order to keep liquidity in the market.
Sure.
Well, now they're trying to sell those out. We'd like to see them stop doing that,
Yep.
Or at least signal that they're not going to sell additional MBSs, mortgage-backed securities. So we'll see if they're listening. We know they're listening. The question is, do they really hear us? And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, because their instinct is to jack up rates, cool the housing market,
Right.
and kind of just put a freeze on the consumer side of things. What we're essentially asking is, we need to build our way out of this, right?
That's
It's all like you were saying earlier.
That's
It's about the supply side
Right.
of this thing. Then that's what we're trying to ask them to do, right?
Yeah, and the real concern is the spread between the 10-year Treasury rate, which is what the 30-year fixed rate is
Based on
is usually based on.
Yeah.
Usually, it's about 120 or 130 basis point spread, with mortgage rates being higher than bond rates. But what we're seeing is that spread is almost 300%.
It's crazy.
And if the Fed could send those signals, we think the mortgage rates cool and actually fall back to close to that traditional, 130, 140 basis point spread. And that would get us below 7%. We think really unlocks that demand
right.
and helps move the economy forward. More importantly, construction lending's higher because of these rates.
Yeah.
I think that would really jumpstart the supply conversation we so desperately need.
Yeah, and to kind of put an emphasis on that, it's really rates driven. I mean, the The NHB Westlake Royal Remodeling Market
Yep,
Index came
right.
out today. That's a quarterly index.
Yep.
Down slightly 3%, but
Yeah.
still at 65.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we've always talked about, and our good friend Dr. Robert Dietz, the doc, always talks about, there's famous docs in history. Okay, you got Doc Holliday.
Yeah.
Okay, you've got Doc Brown from Back to the Future,
Yeah.
and then you've got
The Dietz.
Dr. Robert Dietz. Yeah, there's really only 3 out there. Maybe Dr. Strangelove, Dr. Livingston, I would presume would be on the list.
Dr. J.
Dr. J. Yeah, right. So maybe there's more than just a couple, but I would put
We digress.
Rob Dietz up there with the great docs in history. Where were we? So what I was so
RMI.
what Rob is constantly pointed to the remodeling market.
Yeah.
Being kind of a bright spot. Is people, maybe they're not selling homes, so they're going to stay put, but they do have a lot of equity in their homes.
That's right.
And they're going to remodel and stay in place. So the fact that it's cooling a little bit might be another indication that people are just taking a really big pause here on anything when it comes to your homes or apartments.
Yeah, and remodeling continues to outpace new construction,
Correct.
right? Like
Yep.
usually we're talking about 31%
Yep.
of total construction. Now we're closer to 43%.
Right.
So
Again, a weird market, right? I mean, you think about new homes are making up a bigger portion of the for sale market. New home buyers are making up a larger portion of buying new homes, right? So
yeah.
it's just the market is so strange, and yes, it will settle eventually, but we're definitely some bumpy months coming up here.
Yeah, I guess so. But
Yeah.
let's clarify. Long term, we still think
Yeah.
that housing's solid, and we're going to
Yeah.
bounce out of this. We just have to
Absolutely.
go through all this.
Yeah, that's right. I think 24 is the pivot year, and 25 hopefully we're really going to start to accelerate. That's what Rob says.
That's right.
Even Rob will tell you, we think third quarter and fourth quarter GDP are going to outpace what he thinks is going to happen already. So
Yep.
it's just a weird market, and I think that's why our actions with the Fed are really trying to throw another, put another thing on their watch list if they really try to navigate this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Speaking of turmoil,
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, now let's pivot to the other part of
Yeah.
government, the Hill.
Yeah, the Hill, right.
And particularly the House.
The House, yeah.
Right now, things are still kind of up in the air. The House Republicans did, in a secret vote, decide on Steve Scalise of Louisiana.
Right.
But that's still kind of up in the air as to whether or not he gets this thing, right?
Yeah, the House yesterday, they came together as the House Republican Conference, and the Democrats did too, to nominate their choice for the Speaker of the House when the whole House will vote. Some thought it was going to be today. So far it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
But the Republicans nominated Steve Scalise by a majority of their conference. The Democrats, of course, are going to put up current minority leader Hakeem Jeffries.
Yep.
The real question now, those two nominees, and you can put anybody else's name into nomination for consideration on the floor.
Sure.
But Scalise is kind of the conference's choice. Somebody's got to go get a majority of the House, which is 218. We saw 15 ballots before Speaker McCarthy got enough votes of quote unquote those voting and present,
right?
In order to get the votes. Now the question is, can Steve Scalise get there? And then we already heard there's 10 or 15 holdouts that are either going to vote for Speaker McCarthy, they're going to vote for Jim Jordan, the other candidate, really for Speaker. They're going to vote for somebody else, and so I think we're still in this period of turmoil. And as much as I watched Steve Scalise, come out of the conference meeting yesterday and immediately launched into why he's the right person for Speaker. You always want to set the floor, but the fact that we haven't had a vote yet speaks that there's still some wheeling and dealing going on there.
And let's take a pause here. I mean, we like Steve Scalise. He's a good person for housing, right?
Yeah, our members have a great relationship with him in Louisiana. Our lobbying team has a great relationship with him here in Washington, D.C. He is a friend of housing. All of the officers who come up in the spring for their leadership meeting, Steve Scalise is consistently the only member, whether Democrat or Republican in the House, that always makes time for our leaders.
Yeah.
He's that guy, really a great guy. Of course, we know he was almost killed at a shooting many, many years ago. Those of us who were in Washington, D.C. that day at our spring legislative conference remember that. Now he's battling cancer, but he is a great leader, and I think that he understands housing. I've been a champion on flood insurance for us. I've been a champion on so many things. So if he does win the vote, I'm excited to work with him as the next speaker.
Yeah, and I think you just touched upon it. The big issue and why we're keeping an eye on this so vehemently is the fact that the clock is ticking. Right, we had a CR back,
a couple weeks ago
A couple
now,
weeks
yeah,
ago, right?
right.
So we had a 45-day CR.
Right.
So flood insurance isn't still in play, right?
Yeah, the CR runs out mid-November, I think the 17th of November. So we're going to be right back to where we were in the lead up to September 30th. So that's going to be the first minefield the new speaker's going to have to navigate. Of course, we have our HBI/Job Corps cuts in the House bills or the House appropriation bills. How is that going to get played out? When do we negotiate with the Senate? My gut tells me there's going to be another CR that gets us through into mid or late December. Heck, they may even punt it past that into January or February. So we're not out of the woods yet. The dynamics in the House of Representatives remain that they've got the conservatives who want to see us really cut back government spending, and they're willing to throw the economy into turmoil by shutting the government down to do that. We'll see how the next speaker navigates that, because we saw what happened when Kevin McCarthy technically did navigate it, but it cost him his speakership. Yeah,
and I was going to say, do you think Scalise will have to do the same concessions that McCarthy did?
I hopefully not, because having that sort of Damocles hanging over your head about the motion to vacate is no way to run a House of Representatives.
Right.
Like when you're constantly looking over your shoulder. A lot of people talked about whether or not the conservatives ever truly trusted Kevin McCarthy for whatever that means.
Sure.
And they've all signaled, well, Steve Scalise is a man of his word. Kevin McCarthy is a man of his word, as far as I'm concerned. But nonetheless, we're going to find out pretty quickly whether it's personality or true ideology that was the driver behind the McCarthy issues, and whether Scalise can repair those, or somebody else. Steve Scalise may be the nominee today. If he can't get the votes, they're going to move on to somebody else. I mean,
do you think it's Jim Jordan if he does?
I don't know. Jim Jordan didn't get the votes the first place,
right.
So why would he be the next one? So do we have Speaker Pro Tem Patrick McHenry right now? Does all of a sudden he say, okay, fine, I'll do it, and they can? I still think the same dynamics are there.
Right. Well, things are happening right now. Hopefully, when we do this podcast next week, we'll have some answers. Right?
I hope so. Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I think that's it for us today.
I think that's it for us today. And it's always a full show.
It's always a full show.
So until next time.
That's right.
I'm Jim Tobin.
I'm Paul Lopez.
See ya.
Take care.